Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing Destiny 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, Titans in the games. Let's get to it. So the Guardian games have been out for about a week now, and we are approximately 1/3 of the way through the event that is called the Guardian Games. Now currently, the Hunters did win day 1, and after that, the Titans have been dominating. And what is the real reason that the Titans are dominating? There's a lot of hypotheses and theorizing about why that is, but we're going to get into our own theory as to why that is. Now, first off, because a lot of this stuff is behind the scenes, I am showing you the chain reaction bounty from the Guardian games and why it is bugged in the background. Alright, the Titans are in the lead, and one person hypothesized that it's because the Titans want it more than the other two classes. And that is such a great Titan attitude to have. The podium doesn't like me, so I think I'm gonna headbutt it. Alright, so, no, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that the Titans want it more. I think that there is a problem. Day 1, all the medals were 1-to-1. Bungie didn't implement an algorithm until day 2. The algorithm is broken. That's the brass tacks. And this is why I think that is. The algorithm that Bungie uses for RNG, for drops, loot, is also broken. Now you may just say, oh, their RNG is just heavy-handed and you get the same piece over and over because they want you to work a little bit harder to get the others. Now that could potentially be the case if that was the only thing that was in evidence. Now in addition, well, let's back up for a second. Anyone that has gotten 2 of the exact same guns with almost identical perks knows exactly what I'm talking about here. So if you've gotten 2, edge transits and they both have nearly identical perks on them because they both dropped at the same time and they both gave you those edge transits, or how at one point edge transit was the loot du jour every day. So they've been tweaking RNG, but at the core of their algorithm there is a problem, and I'm going to talk about that. In addition to loot, the Nightfalls used to be controlled by RNG. So at the weekly reset, they would change the Nightfall, and the Nightfall ended up being 1 out of 2 or 3 Nightfalls out of all the different Nightfalls that are available. And eventually Bungie came out and said, we're taking it off of RNG and it's just going to go into a manual rotation. So they basically handpick the Nightfall every week, and that is the way it's been since then. They have not put it back onto RNG, and that is another piece to say that their algorithm is not working the way it was intended. If it was working the way it was intended, then you would have an equal chance for each Nightfall to show up, and that is certainly not the case. Now, in programming, if you took programming classes, somewhere along the line they showed you how to do, and towards the beginning, how to do an RNG generator, and that was based on time, because any of the RNG code, it basically just uses a predetermined set of numbers. So whenever you pull up that RNG, it always picks up from that same list of numbers. So adding a time factor in there gives it a sense of randomness, even though that is still not random. So I kind of feel like their RNG might be time-based, given that the weekly reset always happens at the same time, and those Nightfalls would be 1, 2, or 3 of the same ones every time when it was RNG based. And this makes sense because if the time is always the same at reset and it changes at reset, then within 2-3 seconds you're going to have 1, 2, or 3 different numbers, which also explains when you get a drop at essentially the same time, so 2 drops, 3 drops, legendary, those legendaries all tend to be the same slot, sometimes the same weapon or armor, and with the same perks, because that RNG is always pulling from the same time or within a short amount of time. So step 1 is that they need to take it off of time. in order to be, or not look like it's being heavy-handed. Because if it was truly random, then the Nightfalls would be randomized, and loot, if it was randomized and with a heavy-handed modifier, then yes, you would see some of the same loot or similar loot, but that is simply not the case. Now, what does this have to do with the Guardian games? Well, the Guardian games uses a similar algorithm to kind of level the playing field for the different classes. If you don't know, there are more hunter accounts than any other account. So just with sheer numbers, the hunters should win the Guardian games, hands down. Now, in order to make everything fair, they introduced an algorithm. Now, the first day, day number 1, they let everything play out to make sure everything was working, relatively speaking, and they got the desired outcome, or the expected outcome, where hunters would be at the top, Titans would be at the bottom, because there are fewer Titan accounts than there are warlocks, fewer warlock accounts than hunters. And then they implemented the algorithm, and then everything went crazy. So we need to talk about what type of algorithm that they're using, and what assumptions are being made, why they are valid assumptions or invalid assumptions, and what needs to be done to correct this. Alright, so what they're doing is they're basically weighting every metal that goes into the podium. So every time you put in a metal, gold, silver, or bronze. Now, I am also making an assumption that each metal is weighted in and of itself. So a bronze metal isn't worth as much as a silver, which isn't worth as much as a gold. So a bronze is worth 1 point, silver is worth 2 points, gold is worth 4 points. Or 1, 2, 3. I mean, you get the picture. So assuming that everyone is putting in the same number of metals, or the maximum number of metals per account, the hunters would win. So what they're going to do is they're going to weight the metals. So when you put it in, it's not going to be worth as much, or it's going to be worth more, I should say. So for the sake of assumptions and the sake of simplification, we're going to say that there are 100,000 Titan accounts, and there are 200,000 warlock accounts, and there are 400,000 hunter accounts. Now, the actual numbers we don't know, but Bungie should have that information, so they are going to be basing it off of the actual number and weighting accordingly. So, and we're also going to make an assumption that there is an equal ratio between the different classes of active accounts versus inactive accounts. And I'll talk about why that's not a valid assumption here in a minute. So basically, we're going to take every metal that the hunters put in, because there's 400,000. If every hunter put in 1 metal a day, that would be 400,000 points. And of course, given to weighting, we're going to say it's all the same type of metal. So that would be 400,000 points maximum, and then warlocks would be 200,000 maximum, and then 100,000 for the Titans. So of course, obviously, that is not fair to the Titans with their little nation of 100,000 versus 400,000 hunters. So what they did was each metal that the hunters put in would be worth 1. The warlocks, each metal that they put in would be worth 2. And the Titans, each metal that they put in would be worth 4. So, assuming everyone in the account does 1 metal, hunters would have 400,000 metals and 400,000 points. Warlocks would have 200,000 metals, but because they're worth double, that would be 400,000 points. Titans would put in 100,000 metals, and that would be worth 400,000 points, and then we would have a tie. But obviously, that is not what happened. Now, talking about the earlier assumption, some people have 3 accounts, but they only use 1 of the classes. So maybe you have 3 different characters, you have a hunter, a warlock, and a titan, but you almost entirely use 1 class. The other ones you don't use as often, or you only use them to get to that powerful cap faster. So you have that. You prefer the hunter over the titan or the warlock, or the warlock over the titan or the hunter, or the titan instead of the warlock or the hunter. Now, hopefully, Bungie has taken that into account, but I don't know, and there's no guarantee that that is the case. Inactive accounts or inactive characters on accounts can account for a great deal of variation in the data. So even though there are 400,000 hunters, half of those accounts have multiple characters, and of those accounts, 50% don't use their hunter more than once a week, or don't use it for the event, or you get the picture. So there's that assumption, taking into account the wrong number, or just the raw number instead of an adjusted number. So that can skew things. But I think the real problem is not that. Now, one of a couple of things is happening here in the background, and no matter which of these is happening, we're getting the same result. Either the algorithm, much like the RNG, is broken, so instead of being 1 medal for each hunter medal, 2 medals for each warlock medal, and 4 medals for each titan medal, we're getting instead 1 medal for each hunter medal, 20 medals for each warlock medal, and 40 medals for each titan medal, which results in this skewed curve where the titans are almost all the way to the top. Warlocks are in the bottom half, and then the hunters are at the very basement. And that makes a lot of sense. The other thing is that because of the algorithm, it is interacting with the weights of the medals and how it interacts with the podium, which is resulting in the same thing. We're having this uneven distribution. Because if everything was working as planned, then you would see a little bit more movement during the course of the day between resets, when the day starts off and when the day ends, where the different banners would be moving along different paths, where the hunter banner might be in the lower half or 2/3. There would be movement, is what I'm basically saying. There would be movement of the banners, and that just isn't the case. At reset, everything is even, but within 10 minutes, the titans are already way at the top. The only other thing that could be happening is that there is a predestined medal count from day to day, so that automatically after the reset, after a fixed amount of time, all of a sudden titans have 1 million medals, warlocks have 300,000 medals, and hunters have 0 medals, and there's no way to come back from that. If you go into the tower right at reset, you can see the banners even, but come back even 10 minutes later, and it is skewed, and it remains that way for the rest of the day. So through no fault of their own, the warlocks and the hunters have absolutely no chance of winning this Guardian Games, and with the stakes being what they are, whoever comes in first is supposed to, for the rest of the year, be able to say, yes, we came in first, Titans are number 1, but it's going to be a shallow victory if things continue the way they are. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check us out on social media, and thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you next time.